"You better not kick that ball in my yard," Glenda yelled. She leaned over the porch railing, waving her fist at the children playing ball on the street. The kids in her neighborhood were always out front, and their presence angered her to no end. More than once, she had found the prized petunias in her flower bed crushed by their balls. If Glenda had her way, she didn't want the children anywhere near her property. She spent much of her time preserving her yard. The flowers were watered every day, and her lawn was her pride and joy. In fact, it was the greenest and healthiest patch of grass in the entire neighborhood. But it was the kids who ruined its carefully maintained beauty by walking on it. As a result, she spent many nights thinking of ways to keep the children away. In one instance, she had a metal railing placed at the side of the house. But when the kids passed it on the way to school, they would swing on it like monkeys. She drove to the hardware store and bought grease. She took care of the problem by smearing the oily substance on the metal fence. Glenda knew that no one in the neighborhood liked her, but that was the cost of having a pretty yard. She suspected that some of the people were probably a little scared of her too. In the 25 years she lived in her home, no one had ever come to speak with her. This was probably because she was known as the crazy lady on the street. Glenda likely contributed to the label when she painted large flowers on her garage door. If anyone asked, she would have told them that she did it because plants brought her joy. When her husband was alive, he loved to garden and grew all types of flowers and vegetables. And every year he introduced new plants to his collection. At the time, his obsession exasperated her. But now, after he passed away, she felt closer to him when she was gardening. One day, Glenda didn't feel like herself. She felt dizzy and weak. Her legs weren't functioning properly either, and she kept falling down. She didn't know what to do, so she called Estelle, her daughter who lived in another state. "You need to go to the hospital, Mom," she said. Estelle called an ambulance, and Glenda was taken to the hospital. The doctors there told her that she had suffered a stroke and was lucky that she had made it to the hospital in time. After a week at the hospital, Glenda was sent home. Her daughter stayed with her for a couple of days and helped her with groceries and other chores. But all too soon, Estelle had to return to her family. It was when her daughter left that loneliness and sadness washed over Glenda. She usually kept herself busy in the past, but since she returned home, she was too weak to get out of bed. And during the hours that passed by, she was alone in her big empty house. Many times her thoughts drifted to her beloved husband. While 10 years had passed since his death, he was always on her mind. When he died, the spark in her had died with him. 2 weeks passed, and Glenda was well enough to move around the house. However, she wasn't able to drive to the grocery store. When her daughter called, she fought back her disappointment when she learned Estelle wasn't able to visit this week. Glenda opened her fridge and saw that she only had 4 eggs in the carton and a quart of milk left in the jug. She looked in the pantry and found 2 cans of corn. All she could do was wait until Estelle's next visit and make do with what she had. Glenda started to feel a bit cooped up in the house, so she decided to go out on the porch to get some sun. But to her dismay, she discovered that her beautiful green patch of grass had turned yellow from the sun. With dread in her heart, she went to inspect her flower bed. She had been too weak to water her plants, and her prized petunias were unlikely to be alive. And they were dead indeed. But the sun didn't cause it. Glenda was horrified when she realized that every single plant had been pulled out of the ground. Their remnants were discarded on the dead grass. She knew without a doubt that the neighborhood kids had done this. Glenda went back inside and began to weep. The children hated her, and the neighbors didn't care whether she lived or died. All at once, loneliness and sadness covered her like a blanket and threatened to smother her. A little while later, her doorbell rang. Suddenly, her sadness changed to anger. It was probably the kids who came back to torment her. She marched to the front door, intending to give them a piece of her mind. But when Glenda opened the door, she saw the little girl who lived across the street. "What do you want?" Glenda demanded. The girl looked up at her and gave her a tremulous smile. "My mom said you weren't feeling well, so she made you soup. She said you might need some food too." Glenda looked down at the hot container of homemade soup and the bag of groceries in the child's hands. "Oh," Glenda said, taken aback by the offering. She felt her throat tightening. "Thank you." She had rarely interacted with this neighbor, and she wondered why they were being so nice to her. After all, they barely knew her, and she thought they hated her. A few days later, the girl returned with some cut-up watermelon and cookies. When Glenda was well enough to tend to her garden again the following summer, she called the girl over and sent her home with a bag of cherry tomatoes. Glenda got to know the young girl and discovered that she liked pretty flowers too. She taught the child the names of the flowers and told her the stories attached to them. The entire family also paid visits to her, and she got to know the other neighbors as well. As time went on, Glenda continued to interact with her new friends, and she no longer felt lonely or sad. She realized that she had a mistaken perception of the strangers on her street. Now that she had given them a chance and opened her heart to them, she discovered that her neighborhood was filled with kind people that actually cared for her. What did you guys think of the story? Please comment in the comment section below. I can't wait to read your answers and discussions. Thanks for watching! And don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest stories to warm your heart. Until next time, bye!